What's up, everybody? Brandon Lewis here. I am Tennessee's conservative anchor man, and I'm probably interrupting your dinner. And I'm sorry. It's been a tough week for old little Brandon. I've had a lot going on at the office. Shout out to Jason Vaughn, who's our media coordinator, who said, "Hey, buddy, even though you're getting this late, and even though I work my tookus off, I'll try to get this thing out there because I love conservatism." So if you ever interact with Mr. Jason Vaughn, tell him thank you because he does a heck of a job here at our publication. Buddy, we've got some fantastic stories. Let me back up. We've got some stories that you need to know about. I don't know how fantastic they are. If you're watching this, please do comment below and let me know where you are listening from or watching from. You could be way out in the hinterlands of Tellico Plains, deep in the woods of the fishing lodge, which I'm actually going to be at on Labor Day weekend. So if you're wandering around out in the Tellico Plains wilderness area, you may find me there with a couple of buddies. This weekend, I got big plans too. What many of you are probably going to do, stay at home. We've been traveling so much, sometimes you've got to put a little bit of time on the calendar just to set yourself at home with your wife and kids. So as we go through these stories, do me a personal favor and comment. Tell me what you think. Hit the old like button, hit the share button. We need to get this information out there because we're going to cover things, I promise you, that the mainstream media and the liberal leftist press in Tennessee absolutely will not cover. Tell me in the comment section where you're from. I'll try to interact with you as long as I can see you down here. Sometimes I get a little bit wound up in these stories and I can't quite get to them. But we're going to go ahead and get to the news stories. If y'all don't mind, let me scroll down here. Comment. Let me know where you're watching from. If you're watching this, I promise you this is live because when you comment down here, I will actually say Ramy, Hot in Knoxville. I actually know a lady named Chris Hot who is up in Oregon. So you're not the only one. And Sammy, oh, love my show from Hornbeak, Tennessee. That sounds a little provocative. Just letting you know. Sounds a little provocative there, Sammy. I hope it's as fun as it sounds. And we got Montana Montgomery. Now that's a good name. Watching from Knoxville, Tennessee. Thank you, Montana. And as the rest of you join, I'll try to talk to you about it. So let's get right into the stories so that we do not mess things up because we got some serious things to cover. Let me get in here, and the view's going to get remote. I messed up here. I should have done this a little better, but we're getting into it. All right. So even though this is not in the big stories, we need to say a collective prayer for both our leaders in our country and for our troops overseas, for those that were attacked viciously by the Islamic terrorists over in Afghanistan. It is so sad right now that we do not have President Trump leading this, because I promise you, if President Trump were leading this, they would not be doing this. They've been emboldened. I can't remember who said it, but weakness is provocative. Weakness is provocative, and they look at Joe Biden, they look at the Democrats, they look at the weak military, they look at the wokeism, and they say, you know what? Now's a good time to attack the United States of America, and somebody should resign, and somebody should lose their job, lots of somebodies, because this is a disgrace, and this is a global embarrassment, and it is an abandonment of the Afghan people in many ways that helped us. Recently did a big interview on a podcast, Indie Thinker. Shout out to Reed Huberman of Indie Thinker. That'll be coming to you. We didn't put that in the Big Seven because I tend to focus on a little bit more local stuff, but we're thinking about that. Let's get right into the story. This is a big one. Nearly 8,700 criminals. These are just the criminals, right? These used to be like the immigration numbers. Now it's just the criminal report. Nearly 8,700 criminals arrested at the southern border in past 10 months, including repeat sex offenders. Over the past 10 months, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents have arrested 8,691 known criminals who have entered the U.S. illegally through the southern border. Combined, they have committed, listen to this, 12,685 crimes in the United States, according to federal data. And the Biden administration just thinks that's hunky-dory. They want to mask you. They want to tell you what you can do. They want to tell you what you can put in your body. But we'll let criminals and sex offenders come across the border because we got our priorities in line. Back to the story. Many individuals arrested by Border Patrol are registered sex offenders who were previously convicted and served time in U.S. prisons. They were released and deported only to re-enter the U.S. again illegally this year. Surprise, surprise. Thank you so much, Carol, for joining me from Murfreesboro, not Montana. I'm sorry, I added some extra there. I apologize. That's editorializing. Back to the story. The Biden administration directed Immigration and Customs Enforcement to cancel Operations Talon, a nationwide operation conducted by ICE to remove convicted sex offenders illegally in the U.S. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you cancel an operation to remove sex offenders? You know, sometimes they call conservatives conspiracy theorists about child sex trafficking. But then you watch Biden cancel Operation Talon, which is a nationwide operation to stop what? Sex trafficking. Sometimes, one of the big reasons we have a lot of conspiracy theories is because we see things that happen that are obvious. They call them conspiracy theory, and then they do things that just reinforce the narrative of truth. Back to the story. In February, attorneys general from 18 states wrote a letter to Biden expressing outrage over canceling Operation Talon, citing criminal statistics. The attorney generals wrote the cancellation of this program effectively broadcast to the world, of course, that the United States is now sanctuary jurisdiction for sexual predators. This message creates a perverse incentive for foreign sexual predators to seek to enter the United States illegally and assaults more victims with the process of unlawful migration after they arrive. Angela Pittman Beaver, thank you for joining us from Saudi Daisy. Hey, you're close to me. That's awesome. Thank you for being here. All right, next story. Tennessee GOP critical of Lee's handling of COVID by executive order. When Governor Lee signed Executive Order 84, giving parents the ability to opt their child out of local mask mandates enacted by a school or health board, he also declined, calling a special session of the legislature, leaving a number of concerns raised by the 73, that's all of them, by the way, House Republicans who called for the session unanswered. Now, the first thing is, I'm so glad that Governor Lee makes conservative primary voters opt out of something that the school boards don't have the legal authority to require in the first place. That's good, Lee. Oh, Half Measure. I think that's his middle name, Half Measure Lee. Is that? What's the climate like? How much can I get away with? How liberal can I be? Back to the story. With the executive order issued, the pressure appears to be off to call a special session to address these issues. A lot of this has to do with the fact that Randy McNally doesn't care about separation of powers, and he likes for you and me to be completely unrepresented in our legislative districts. Cowardice. I mean, what conservative, tell me please, what conservative doesn't believe in separation of powers? No conservatives. So if somebody is ruling for 18 months by executive order when we're no longer in an emergency, that tells you about everything you need to know about their conservative credentials. Rebecca Bond, thank you for joining us from Kingston. I appreciate you very much. We have got Susie from Jackson and also Robert Shelton from Greenville. Thanks, buddy. Back to the story. With the special order issued, pressure's off, such as the prolonged state of emergency and sunsetting of the governor's emergency powers. School boards and health boards who defy the will of the electorate and medical freedom abuses by private and public organizations. But several members of the GOP, and buddy, I hope you call these people and thank them, have told us they still support a special session. Representative Scott E. Sapicki said, I hope both speakers realize the magnitude of the issues and bring us back into session to start deliberating solutions for Tennessee. The longer we stay under these executive orders, the more the abnormal will become the normal. And buddy, hasn't that been the mantra? Hasn't that been the mantra? Representative Tim Rudd said the State House has signed on. Most of the state Senate leadership and governor are against a special session. I don't know what noise a rhino makes, but that's the noise I hear coming out of the Tennessee State Senate. Maybe I should go down, if somebody knows a zoo where a bunch of rhinos are, maybe we could get them mic'd up and listen to them. You could sound that. I get a sound clip playing here. Alan, thank you for joining us from Arlington. I appreciate you. 2/3 of the House, back to Rudd's comments, and 2/3 of the Senate must agree, or the governor can call his own. The House is on board. The other two branches are not at this point. Now, here's the thing. This is why the House and this is why the Senate needs to call their own special session, and you need to be calling your representatives in McNally about this. When they call the special session with 2/3, they can pick what they want to be on the agenda. When Lee calls it, do you think he's going to put sunsetting executive powers? He's enjoyed being a dictator for 18 months. He's enjoyed telling you how much medical freedom you can have. He's enjoyed telling you if you can go to Christmas or go to Thanksgiving. He's enjoyed shutting down mom and pop businesses now that we've got 24% fewer small businesses than when Bill Lee took over. He enjoyed letting the schools ruin people's employment opportunities by sitting kids at home while moms and dads had to quit jobs. And now kids that formerly read at 33%, which Bill Lee thought was fantastic, with Penny Schwinn at the head, architected the Child Wellness Check program. Look that up. Google that. Penny Schwinn Child Wellness Check. If you've never heard of it, Google it. It's impressive. And Lee knew about it. Impressive. Thank you for coming. Tommy Lee from Cleveland, Tennessee. This is amazing. Separation of powers. Why are we having a conversation as conservatives in a Republican state about separation of damn powers? Ridiculous. Next story. And this is a perfect lead-in. Bill Lee's leadership on display and Penny Schwinn's leadership on display. Report finds, get this, only 53% of state funding for education is used in the classroom. Well, no wonder. No wonder kids are struggling. You wouldn't even have to read the rest of this report to know that it's about the teachers' unions and the administrators and all this slush, this government job factory that does not educate our children. It's a travesty. It's a travesty. Imagine somebody called you up. You hired a contractor. You hired a contractor. Or better yet, let's say that something happened to you. Let's say that something happened to you and you died and you left all your money to somebody to look over your kids. And not that you could look on from the grave, but imagine if that person only spent 53% of the money you left for your kid to actually do something for him. That's what it's looking like here. Hats off to the Beacon Center for doing this stuff that shows government waste. If you don't know who they are, you should look them up, the Beacon Center. A good conservative organization. Back to the story. According to a report released on Wednesday by the Beacon Center of Tennessee, the amount of funding for education in Tennessee rises each year, but only 53% of the state's education funding makes it to the classroom. This number falls 7% below the national average. You'd think in a conservative state more would make it to the classroom. Tennessee spends $11 billion on education each year, the report states, which equals around $11,300 per student. Let me tell you something. My daughter gets a fantastic education for half of that price and none of the mess. We need privatization of education. We need school choice. We need vouchers, ESAs. I don't care what they do. Hand out dollar bills. Parents know better than these government bureaucrats, and we see it on display every day. We see it in the test scores, and we've definitely seen it during COVID. I didn't think I was going to get fired up. I'm trying to get out of here. All right. Michael, abolish government schools. Hey, I can get on with that. Thank you, Michael. And tell me what you think about these stories. I'm not seeing any comments. Y'all are you're falling down on your job today. I need to hear what you think about the stories, not just where you're from. Let's get to typing. Come on. While the funding is intended for... I can't do this by myself, okay? I need a little Tom Sawyer paint the fence here. When are American citizens going to band together and take a stand? We have to stop this mess, and I agree, and I hope we do it in the 2022 Republican primaries right here in the state of Tennessee. Michael says allowing government to run schools is akin to having government run all grocery stores instead of helping those in need, like with SNAP. And your government, everything it touches seems to turn to you know what. You know what is it Trump said? Everything woke turns to shh. Well, everything the government touches, it appears by the results, turns to shh as well. Back to the story. While the funding is intended for students, Ron Schultz, Director of Policy and Research for the Beacon Center, says a vast majority of it is used to cover administrative costs. What are y'all administrating? Failure? Are you administrating failure? Because that's what shouldn't be that expensive to administrate failure. If you're going to fail, we don't need to put money into failure. We can fail at half the cost, can't we? According to Schultz, one area of increase that has been the number of assistant principals added to Tennessee schools. The number of teachers across the state has decreased by about 3% since 2013, but the number of assistant principals has increased by 25%. Boy, ain't that the government. Class sizes, massive and large, but we got managers and managers, too many chiefs. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. It's funny how good old Southern sayings have a lot of truth to them. Lord, we need some funny stuff. I'm going to try to work some funny stuff into these stories. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to see. I need to ask Jason to remind me, find some funny stories, okay? Next story. Now, this is a good story. Okay, everything else up to now has been kind of bad, right? We had 3 really bad stories. We're going to have a good one right here. This is good. And this is because of conservatives like you freaking taking a stand and not putting up with this mess, as we just learned. We should refuse to go anywhere that says we must wear a mask. That's what I do. And Susie says they are indoctrinating our children, and we have to put our heads in the sand for too long to let this happen. Buddy, we did. And it's because you think, okay, I'm trying to be a good member of the community. What do? They run you over. They ruin your kids. Back to the story. Parents win victory for Rutherford County middle school students. Earlier this week, a Rutherford County parent, I want you to listen to this, and I want you to pay attention. Now listen, if you see any of this crap going on in your schools, you send it to the Tennessee Conservative. We'll report on them. We'll report on them. You catch some of these teachers doing this mess, let me know their name, get a video, get a picture, get some proof. We'll get it out there. We're one of the only news outlets in Tennessee that will do this. Speaking of which, we need your help. If you'll go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support, we need your money. I'm not going to lie about it. I run this thing out of my pocket. It's expensive. I'm just trying to get it to break even. You remember when your parents complained that things were expensive? Running this is expensive, but I do it because I have a passion for it, and I believe it needs to be done, and I looked around and nobody else was doing it. And when you go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com/support, which is actually in the description here, and you give any amount, we'll send you 2 Proud Tennessee Conservative bumper stickers. You can annoy your relatives and friends with these, maybe even sneak out there and stick it on their car. Put it on your car for sure, but stick it on their car. We know that they're proud Tennessee conservatives out there. And we'll also send you this directory of all your state reps and Senate members, so you can ask them to call a damned special session. This is a family show. I'm sorry for cursing. I just get fired up. I got to watch my language. And finally, this thing has magical properties. This was actually forged when they melted down portions of the Holy Grail, and it still has wisdom inside of it. If you open it up, if you ask a question, if you put it in there on a piece of paper, and you wait about 75 years, and you come back and then open it up, it will have the answer to that question. It takes a little while to work. We should have used more of the Holy Grail. We'll send you this tumbler if you give $50 or more, and recurring monthly donations really help us, even if they're small. I don't want to have to bend over for corporations and crap like that, and so I'd really just rather be supported by our good conservatives, so I don't have to do that. Back to the story. This is about the parent wins victory for Rutherford County middle schools. Among other things, the sign stated, get this, kids can't read and write, can't get jobs, scoring abysmal. You should look at the TCAP scores that have come out here recently, but this is something they have time and energy to focus on while they're spending 53% of the money in the classrooms. Among other things, the sign stated, immigrants are welcome. Well, no, not all immigrants are welcome. If you break our laws, and if you come over here, and if you don't want to adapt to our culture, if you don't want to work your way, if you want to break our laws, it's the first thing you do when you come over here, and you want to drive down wages, you want to fill up our already struggling, failing schools and healthcare systems, and bring in COVID and everything else, we're supposed to be so worried about it. No, not all immigrants are welcome. Black Lives Matter. What? We need to support a Marxist organization that is about breaking up the nuclear family, which is one of the big reasons that the black community has been so devastated. That's just a Marxist organization. Yeah, we need to teach kids about that. That's helpful. Climate change is real. Really? Yeah, because it's been changing forever. But don't be trying to, at the same time you take the Bible out of schools and the Pledge of Allegiance out of schools and you're kneeling for the national anthem, we don't need you to be trying to bring your global warming religion, which is what it is, that is not scientifically verified, that is used mainly and almost exclusively to try to control the lives of other people by governments. Gender isn't binary. It's a sign. That's what we need. Immigrants are welcome, Black Lives Matter, climate change is real, and gender isn't binary. So there's more than male and female. Really, because I've never seen it. An educator that puts this up, that thinks these are good things to teach kids, should be summarily fired. And I hope, flogged and ran out of school on a rail. Disgraceful. I wish I knew who the person was that put this up. From Nashville, Patty Olson. They are indoctrinating our children, and we have put our heads in the sand for too long. I already read that, and that was from Susie. Back to the story. The concerned parent reached out to the respective Rutherford County School Board member with the information, and the Tennessee Conservative reached out to the principal, which we did, in Smyrna Middle School, and the next day for comment, the school's media contact replied. The principal addressed the poster with the teacher and explained classroom walls and bulletin boards are intended to be used for displaying materials related to the academic standards covered in the class. If you got a teacher so stupid that they don't understand what the cork boards are for, you might have a dumb one on your hands there, honey, and you might need to get rid of them. Why are we reporting this? 2 reasons. Number 1, to show that parents must be vigilant and monitor what their children are being exposed to. And also, this is the big takeaway, and I want you to pay attention to this, to show that one brave voice makes a difference. If you see something, you say something. You send it to the Tennessee Conservative, we'll get that crap out of the schools. We'll call attention to it. Who knows if Penny Schwinn, the CRT lover, who wants to wellness check every child in Tennessee while our own school fails and to violate parental privacy rights, I don't know that she'll ever do anything about it, but we can at least call attention to it. Next story. Music venues disagree on COVID policies. Following the footsteps of the Moon River Music Festival for communists and socialists and people who hate, apparently, anybody to have medical choice or freedom, I said that part, my opinion, in Chattanooga and City Winery in Nashville, several music festivals and venues in Tennessee have announced requiring proof of COVID-19 vaccinations and little yellow stars to be placed on people's shirts so we can discriminate against people medically, which Bill Lee seems to be perfectly happy with. And apparently even the Tennessee legislature last year, we had opportunities to stop this vaccine passport mandate business. What did we do? Bunch of yellow star lovers. Yeah, it's amazing we have to fight for something like this. It's disappointing too. Back to the story. You have to be COVID tested 48 hours to 72 hours before showtime, before admittance, including to the Pilgrimage Music Festival in Franklin and Nashville's iconic Bluebird Cafe. I'll never go to those places. CEO Michael Dorff of City Winery said, "We have both lost some customers who are looking to take a stand against the policy and gained some customers who feel safer in creating our bubble of no COVID." Now, buddy, if you can figure out how to create a no-COVID bubble, they ought to give you some kind of Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe you can figure out how to do it everywhere else. They've been trying it and failing everywhere, even though all these restrictions have been in place. Back to the story. We have heard overwhelming support from the performing artists who are grateful we are implementing this so they have a safe stage to play, as they need venues to play in again. Well, maybe you shouldn't have given up your constitutional rights and your freedoms as a business owner to shut down in the first place. If you weren't so compliant and you weren't such a sheep, you wouldn't have had the problem. That's what I say. Not all festivals and venues agree with this approach. Backstage Nashville announced that they will not be requiring patrons to show vaccination card to enter our shows. I just can't believe I'm reading this. I feel like I'm in Orwell. Birthplace of Country Music's board of directors and organizers of Bristol Rhythm and Roots Festival penned a letter saying that after numerous conversations with state, regional, and local leaders, they believe that imposing requirements to provide proof of COVID vaccine or negative test is specifically prohibited by Tennessee law. I hope some of these people, and as these things start working through the court, lose tons of money and get tied up legally over all this nonsense. Who in the world do you think you are to tell somebody they have to have a medical treatment imposed upon them to buy something? Shameful. Dan Fowler says Nazis. Well, it's starting to sound a little... Hey, I'm not one to throw that out there. I don't throw it out there. I don't like when it's used because I don't think it's true. But if you study history, you see crisis, restrictions, amped up, segregation, division, compulsion, illegal action. I mean, it looks bad. It looks bad. Patty's with Nashville. Thank you for joining us here. Last story. I'm working up a sweat here. Voting legislation heads to U.S. Senate. Would expand federal control over election rules. Well, we see how the Fed's handling Afghanistan. We see how the Fed's handling inflation. We see how the Fed's handling the economy. I'd love for them to handle elections. They do everything else so well. A new bill to significantly expand federal power over state elections is headed to the U.S. Senate, the latest in a traffic jam of controversial legislation to be decided on by Congress. The U.S. House of Representatives passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. I love how they name these bills things that they aren't. bunch of liars. Along purely partisan lines, the bill would give the Department of Justice, which is really nonpartisan and always even-handed and fair, and not oppressive in any way, to seek out and challenge voting regulations in states that the federal agency deems discriminatory. Now the legislation heads to the Senate, where few expect it can get the necessary 60 votes. Senate Republicans will likely raise the same concerns as their counterparts in the House, who argue the bill would push partisan rules under the guise of racial justice and would give control of local elections to the federal government. If you care about election integrity, you need to be fighting this stuff. Finally, this is a very big story. Death toll from Tennessee flood rises as Biden approves disaster relief. We're actually going to be talking to Wayne Miller, who is the head of the Tennessee Conservatives Coalition. I think I may have left a word out over there in Humphreys County. I'm talking to him tomorrow, interviewing him about how you can help and what they're doing over there. He's also the chairman of the Republican Party over there in Humphreys County. Doing a good job, getting engaged, trying to help some people. Here it goes. On Saturday, August 21st, a flood swept through Middle Tennessee, leaving catastrophic damage in Humphreys County and surrounding areas. It was really like the worst of all possibilities, and it was so unexpected, and so rarely does this happen. It is a very rare, very isolated weather phenomenon. On Wednesday, the body of the final victim was found, bringing the total death toll to 20, authorities said. I think it may be up to 22 now, I'm not sure, I can't remember. The small city of Waverly, some 60 miles west of Nashville, was the community hit hardest by the flood. With the death toll finalized, the searches have now been suspended, and the efforts will shift to cleanup. Biden approved Tennessee Governor Bill Lee's major disaster declaration on Tuesday to aid in recovery. The request estimated more than 10,000 homes left power because of the storms, and many are expected to be without power for days or weeks. More than 202 residents have sought shelter, and area shelters have been set up by TEMA and the American Red Cross. So guys, if you can give some money to those folks over there, if you can give some time, if you can give some help, please do it. You know, we can't control sometimes what's going on overseas. We can't control what's going on in Washington. But I tell you one thing that the Tennessee Conservative is going to try to do to the best of our ability, and I don't care if I ever get nationally recognized, I don't care if anybody ever finds me that's outside of the state of Tennessee, we can make a difference in this state if we'll focus on the people we know and the things we can control as conservatives, and we can make Tennessee a better place. Now listen, many of you follow us here on Facebook, but for some reason, and it is just like, it boggles my mind, especially with all the social media censorship, go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com and please subscribe to our e-newsletter. We send it out daily. Occasionally, if we've got a big interview or something that's critically important for you to know about that requires immediate action, we will send you a text. We collect this information. Why? Because sometimes they shut down conservatives, like the President of the United States. But the Taliban still has a Twitter account, you know, because they're definitely less dangerous than the President expressing his freedom of speech. And again, crazy times. Looks very similar to some cultures before that went a little wackadoodle and did some very terrible things to their own citizens. So guys, be vigilant. Be vigilant out there. If you see something, say something. Let me know here at Tennessee Conservative. I forgot to mention this, but this week I did MC the Freedom Matters Tour with Gary Humble of Tennessee Stands. We had Andy Ogles. We had some conversations about election integrity and a bunch of other stuff. And it went really well. Because speaking of newsletters, are you familiar with Substack? Sometimes I eat a Substack. Is that where you put all the sandwiches together? I'm sure it's not. But no, I'm not familiar with it. Just let me know. Send a Facebook Messenger or an email and tell me about it. Maybe it's something I need to know about. But guys, let's focus. Let's focus on what we can do here, right here, in our beautiful state. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate your support, your prayers. I get notes in the mail. I get checks in the mail. I get little donations that come in at 3 a.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning. People that are finally like, okay, this guy's doing a good job. I'm going to try to help him. I ain't got much, but I can help a little. I see you people out at events, and you're like, I love your show. I love what you're doing. I read your publication. We've only got 2 conservative news outlets. We're outnumbered 80-1. So that means I need as many of y'all to help as many of me as there are, and it ain't but 2 of us. Us and the Tennessee Star, and we tend to focus more on the state issues, and we tend to dig into some of these weeds because we just have the one publication, so we can do that. But we need your help. And I also appreciate many of you that go to these conservative events, or when people like the other day when Randy McNally basically got grilled for an hour and a half by really mad conservatives and his own base about not supporting the constitutional liberties that we have. And I think September 7th, I think Bill Lee is going to be up in Meigs County, and I know there's a group of people that are going to go up there and tell old Billy what they think about him ruling like a dictator for 18 months instead of letting us have separation of powers and all the damage economically and educationally that he's caused. Thank you so much, Charlie, watching from Fall Branch. Guys, I appreciate it. What we're doing here is important. It's on my mind all the time. A little obsessed about it. I think God put it on my heart to do this stuff. I really do, because we got, church is under attack, our country's under attack, our state's under attack, our rights are under attack, and our leaders in Tennessee seem to be rather indifferent to it. So hopefully y'all can wake them up. I'm going to do my best here. Y'all have a fantastic weekend. Hope everything's going great with you and your family. If you ever see anything, email me, Brandon at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Y'all take care. I'll talk to you next week. See ya.